1, 2. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope you had a good lunch and you had productive breakout sessions. Yeah? I see smiley faces, so I think you were happy with your lunch. Welcome back to the afternoon session. Now we are beginning Plenary 2, which is Business and Nature, Regenerating Economies and Landscapes. This afternoon, we shift our focus from the rights of nature to our responsibility with nature, exploring how business, food systems, and communities can regenerate both economies and landscapes. In this session, Business and Nature, Regenerating Economies and Landscapes, we hear from leaders who are redefining what it means to create value, not through extraction, but through restoration, reciprocity, and care. I would like to ask our speakers to take a seat, and we may clap for them as they come to the stage. She's joining you now. All right. So our first speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Saskia von Dist, is the founder of Ecofluency, a practice and movement that reconnects people with nature through intuitive communication. She will explore how humans can be a keystone species in regenerating food landscapes, restoring balance, not by controlling nature, but by listening to it. Dr. Saskia.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Wow. Apparently, Linda Tucker, who was going to be speaking before me, has fallen ill, so unfortunately she's not going to be speaking today. So it'll make my job easier not following after her. She's a well-known animal communicator. The future of Earth's well-being depends on our full human presence, not on our absence. I'll share in a minute why I say that, but first, how do we bring our full human presence to the future? There are many ways. One of my favorite shortcuts when facilitating through Ecofluency is to activate our bodies as listening instruments, to engage in dialogue with nature's intelligence. So I invite you to join me in a very basic 10-second exercise that our hunter-gatherer ancestors used when attuning to their surroundings. The invitation is to receive a breath at your own pace, soften your eyes, and become aware of your wide-angle vision, your peripheral vision, and notice what that changes for you, if anything. According to neurobiology, this quick and simple practice of widening our perspective helps to ground us by relaxing our nervous systems and slowing down the frequency of our brains. This is because our physical eyes can only see a very tiny sliver in the vast electromagnetic spectrum that is visible light. But thankfully, our other senses have evolved to pick up information about our surroundings that are beyond our sight and beyond even our senses. So moving our attention from our thoughts to our bodies helps us to slow it down and listen with more of ourselves, becoming more receptive to the environment. Rituals are another way to help us do this, because they activate the imagination and attune the entire body as an instrument of creative listening. Their use can be traced back to humankind's origins, and archaeological evidence in South Africa shows that humans have evolved with ritual and ceremony for at least 100,000 years. They're baked into our being. But what is ritual? One definition is that it is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with one's will. The science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with one's will. Put another way, it's a method of using both discipline and creativity to create the change we wish to see in our physical reality. Rituals serve many purposes, from symbolic to practical. They maintain social cohesion, help transmit knowledge, and for eons they have been a core technology for individual and collective healing, and for spiritual evolution through initiations and rites of passage. For millennia, rituals and ceremonies have been used to create a container for clear conversations, not only with human ancestors, but with the more than human aspects of nature too, both seen and unseen. Like what we've seen in the opening ritual that Mpateleni led with Rutendo and Puvan. Rituals help to focus the mind and calibrate the whole human being for dialogue with other species and forces of nature. And according to farmers, food gardeners, and indigenous wisdom keepers on every continent, the design and timing of land management practices is best done in collaboration with the intelligence of the land. In this way, humans fulfill their role as a keystone species. Doing things that other species cannot, a keystone species is crucial for the health of an ecosystem, and without them, biodiversity, an ecosystem loses its biodiversity and can even collapse. And this might explain why the research done by Dr. Lila June Johnston documents how humans can be architects of abundance. Her work focused mainly on the indigenous knowledge systems of the Americas, but similar practices have been used all over the world to create food landscapes that nourish all of life. For example, yes, Native Americans hunted bison, but they didn't chase or follow them so much as work together with them. Through practices that Lila describes as pruning, burning, reseeding, and essentially sculpting the land, they created food sources that would attract the herds, such as grasslands and nut forests. And with the bison eating this food and then fertilizing these ecosystems, they created highly efficient local nutrient cycles. Circular economy in action. There was reciprocity in the giving and taking of life for food. Most of the Amazon the entire Amazon rainforest began as individual food forests that were tended by humans. Most of the Amazon soil is acidic, sandy, and nutrient poor. But in contrast, Terra Preta is fertile, dark soil dotted all over the Amazon and only found in places where humans have inhabited and shaped the landscape. Formed by burning and composting organic matter, this charcoal-rich soil increases plant growth up to 8 times faster. The Amazon was once grassland and sparse woodland, so these Terra Preta pockets acted as seed banks and incubators for biodiversity, accelerating the evolution of species. Eventually, these food forest islands grew and merged. So the pulsing green lung of the Amazon was born because of the interference by human ancestors, and it can flourish once again with our help. I'd like to believe that the oasis-like church forests in Ethiopia will achieve this in years to come. I share these examples from elsewhere in the world to demonstrate that the indigenous practices of landscape management is true for numerous cultures on all continents. I recommend listening to local wisdom keepers about Southern African indigenous science because they do exist and they are effective. Similar to indigenous land management, biodynamic farming goes beyond organic methods. And biodynamic farmers perform certain rituals at different times of the year and apply preparations or remedies to the compost, fields, and borders of the farm. It is a modern-day version of co-creative stewardship in which the farmers are encouraged to have direct conversation with the landscape. Biodynamic farming rituals nourish and support the unseen elements of the landscape because it is recognized that they are the ones who do the heavy lifting in growing food that is measurably higher in quality, nutrient density, and vitality. But in return, these unseen elements need us to do things that they can't do. As a nature communicator, part of my work with Ecofluency is consulting with the more than human nature on behalf of others. One of my clients is a biodynamic farmer in New Zealand who asked me to help find out why the quails, which are birds that are considered a pest in that area by some farmers, why they were eating her crops. The message I received from the quails was that there was enough food in the wider landscape, but what was lacking in it was vitality. So the fertility rates of all the bird species in the region was dropping. You can guess what comes next. The quails requested that the farmer do a fertility ritual, to enhance the vitality of the landscape. During the ritual, and for days afterwards, birds of all species flocked around her, as if in gratitude. After that, the quail stayed on her land but left her crops alone. No way. Yes, ways. Local farmers have had similar success. With one farmer, Elmarie van Asvegen, who's here, by the way, negotiated a treaty with the jackals to leave her sheep alone, and in return, the jackals are able to roam freely on her land and hunt other animals. She's written about this in one of her books, so you can ask her about that. Communicating with nature can create changes that Western science can't explain. It took me years to accept the limitations of science as a methodology. I had wanted to be a scientist since I was 6 years old, because I thought that it would create the solutions, provide all the answers to saving the world. And it wasn't until I experienced nature communication for the first time 13 years ago, in the middle of my PhD, that I began to expand my worldview. But I needed to gain experiential evidence first to be convinced. So I attended a beginner workshop where I learned to receive information from animals that I could never have known, but could validate the information afterwards. That embodied experience was the beginning of the rest of my life, because it had brought enchantment back in my life, and I hadn't realized how lonely I'd felt until that point. And I slowly began to feel a sense of belonging that I had no memory of before. In our relationship with humans and with the more than human nature, communication is fundamental to building trust, connection, and coherence. Truly effective regeneration is co-created with the rest of nature, bringing the voices of more than human to the table as stakeholders in the decision-making process. But to do so, it really helps to know how to ask and how to listen, obviously. Fortunately, recovering this ancestral birthright is easier than some might think. We've simply forgotten that we are nature and that all humans can do this. I know this now because I teach people how to communicate with nature all the time. It's part of our design. And if we reclaim the skill, we can regain our place, not only as ecosystem engineers, but as biodiversity artists. Whether we call this nature communication, ancestor worship, blessing, prayer, the most important conversation that we can have, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in conservation, or whether it's for other kinds of land management, is the conversation with the guardians, the more than human guardians of the land itself. But becoming a keystone species once more begins by tending to our inner landscapes. And this is perhaps where humans need regeneration the most. It's no coincidence that the origin of the words human and humility both mean earth. This inner gardening can be as simple and as easy as paying attention to your senses, to your breath, and widening your perspective to attune your body to receive a widened range of senses and awareness, giving yourself the permission to reclaim the skill. Ultimately, you are the one standing in your own way with this, with our worldviews, because your exquisite body is already resonant with the power, intelligence, and wisdom of nature. Listening with it is a key to joining the conversation and co-designing our future with the rest of life on Earth. Because Earth doesn't need our absence to thrive. She needs our full human presence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saskia. Now, from listening to nature's voice, we now look at how that translates into tangible action, restoring ecosystems and building communities through hands-on rehabilitation. Our next speaker, Lynette Munro from Nature Connect, leads programs that bring conservation and community development together with landscape rehabilitation and environmental education. Her work shows how restoration creates not just ecological renewal, but also social resilience, empowering local people with skills, identity, and purpose as they heal the land. Lynette.
Okay, just hold it close. Hi, everyone. I sound so impressive. It's not me, it's the organization. And before we start, let's do not what Proven did, which was close our eyes, fatal. We're in the graveyard shift, ladies. So let's stand up. Who is it? If we can all stand up. And we can shake. And we can turn around. And we can touch our toes. Copy me. Can you tell I work with kids? Okay, please sit down. Okay. You know, I feel this big mantle of responsibility on my shoulders, which is very unusual for me. And I think it's because of the nature of the group today and the way we began and the framing of who we are with that spiritual element and that talk of energy. And one thing that I love about being in Cape Town, not just being proud of our diversity of our plants, which is my background, but our diversity of cultures, is that they get along. And in many countries they don't, but in Cape Town, particularly among certain groups, for anyone who's local, it's quite unusual to have such close bonds with people across culture. And so I hope you will be able to allow me the safe space, the psychological safe space, to share my heart. Because one of the things that struck me this morning was how we spoke about colonialism quite in an undefined way, speaking about the Age of Enlightenment or darkness of the 16th century. But I felt it was perhaps helpful to give us perspective that ancient civilizations, so we're thinking Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, India, they all had a hierarchy. There were emperors, kings, commoners, and marginalized people. So the way we treat each other and humans is unfortunately perhaps human. But let me then lead to my story. My story then is that I studied plants, and I was privileged to study what I was interested in, and a bit like you, Saskia, I had thought science has the answers. In the 1980s, 1990s, that's what you did, and it would save the world. Far too many years of study in, I discovered that it doesn't have the solutions I was looking for. Plants are not the problem. I am. And that revelation pivoted me to work in an environmental sector and find a passion working around cooperative management of, in my case, it was small-scale fisheries and giving people access to resources who hadn't had that access before, and what that involved with adult education. But I won't dwell into that. Let me rather tell you that I had always said, when I get married, I'd like to be like my mom, who was able to be a stay-at-home mom. So I had told my boss that. And then I got married, and quite quick, old, 30, 31, and then I fell pregnant. So of course I was going to resign now. So I handed in my resignation. Everybody knew I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. But then I had my first child, and after like 1 week, I phoned my boss. I said, I'll pay anyone any amount of money. I don't want to do this thing. I want to save the planet. And it was a she, and she had wisdom. She said, stay at home for 1 year. It's good for the child, it's good for you. And that turned into 10. So after a decade of motherhood, which I salute absolutely any mum out there, mums who had the privilege to be at home, it's so tough. But mums, I salute those who aren't able to stay at home and must continue to work and be part of a breadwinning team. It is the toughest thing out there. However, I found my way back after 10 years, and I discovered that the world hadn't been saved by the Agenda 21, sustainability, all the stuff I'd got so excited about 10 years before. Things hadn't changed. And one of the main things that hadn't changed was there was no money. And that took me back to my boss. And I said, you taught me, I studied botany, you taught me so much about plants, and you didn't tell me about money. How unhelpful was that? And you didn't tell me about psychology, how to persuade people that they must agree with you, and they must value what you value, and they must do what you want them to do. Okay, to step back, anyone who's done motherhood has got a PhD in business administration, psychology, and probably marketing to persuade your children to do whatever they have to do. But I was found by an organization that I'm now with called Nature Connect. I was being an undercover spy in a little civic association that was being asked or told that development was going to happen between two rivers in an area where development shouldn't happen. So I was found by someone, the CEO of Nature Connect, and he said, we've got to get funding for conservation and for people to know that there's value in nature. So 2 things happened. One, I was interested, because by then I knew if we cannot convince the next generation to do stuff differently, where's Puvin? We are never going to get out of that infinity cycle fire chamber and into the water one if the kids and the next generation aren't interested. And the heartbeat of Nature Connect is environmental education. The other thing he was asking me about was linked to one of those questions this morning, around financing for conservation. And the thinking was that this development could put in place a long-term, stable funding mechanism that would advance the conservation area that it didn't build on, and perhaps environmental education. So that caught my interest, and I joined the team, and it's 5 years on. That is also what caught my interest with, thanks, Karen, for inviting us here, business and nature. So first of all, before we get to business, we've got to get how do we change behavior? And there are 5 ways people say we do things differently. The one we've heard about today, or experienced ourselves, which is our spiritual connection, religion, ethics, whatever you want to call it, our connection to nature. Can I just point out that the spiritual, religious side has profound transformative power, as many of us can testify to, and slip in that the slave trade, arguably with colonial, which for my kids in textbooks is defined as white, was abolished by colonial white slave trader John Newton. Religious experience set out to abolish what he was involved in with a lawyer who was also a politician, so to show the elements that you need for a successful transformative change of behavior. So there's emotional, religious. Then there's the herd effect. We do and we behave how people around us behave. So we've got to change that. We've got to dare to be different. Thanks for this conference. Pull people together and do something different, not the herd mentality. Then there's the marketing and psychology element. I don't know how it persuades us to do stuff, but it does. I met someone here in marketing. I get excited when I meet anyone in marketing because we need to know how to do that to advance our cause. And then there's the knowledge education. Some people will behave differently if they've got the knowledge. That's what my organization is really focused on. And finally, there's money. Money drives behavior. So tomorrow, I'll tell you more about how we use that element of finance and law to help people put money into conservation. And I guess I'd just like to finish with the fact that what should the human race be getting on with? One race, many cultures. It's been asked before, and the answer I heard was 3 things. We should act justly, love kindness, and walk humbly. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lynette. Now, as we consider the power of reconnecting people in place, we now welcome a voice of indigenous wisdom, one that reminds us that food is also a sacred connector. We are going to welcome Makadzi Mpatereni Makaurere, founder of Zomola Mupo, who brings the wisdom of indigenous knowledge systems and ancestral land care. Her work with rural women and the youth celebrates food as a living link between culture, nature, and identity. Welcome to the stage.
Masiari, good afternoon. Since morning, since decades, where people wake up and said there is a massive environmental destruction, there is a thing which is created naturally, not by human being, especially human being, the language. Every clan, every family, every society, every nation were created and given the language. The language that is not taught in the classroom, where the baby, when he get out, start to mama, mama, mama. And nobody teaches the local language of who. Language created the commons. And this commons is in every nation. I respect Ellen Monster. I don't know how to pronounce it, but she talked much about commons. And she talked much about commons in relation to the natural resources. I come from Venda. Venda is found in Limpopo, here in South Africa. We have our Venda language. Everything what we do, we said, is Chivenda. The language also carries the sacredness and the potency of how we connect with nature. We, the Bavenda, we have the language, and I believe it's everywhere, in every nation. We have the word Mupo. Mupo is the language which guides us spiritually, make us to be who we are. And this language, according to today's description, culture, tradition, they say is indigenous knowledge. And hope every nation can go back and find this language. Mupo for us is the word which describes the creation, natural creation. Everything which is created is Mupo. Everything which is not created by the mind of person and the hands of person and that wisdom of the person is Mupo. When we look up there at the sky, in our language we say we are seeing Mupo. The light of Mupo from moon, the stars is Mupo, the sun is Mupo, the clouds is Mupo, the air is Mupo. The mountain is Mupo. Everything which is there in the mountain is Mupo because it's not made by human. The plants, the trees, the grass is Mupo up to the big tree. When you see the baba there, we say it's Mupo. The small reptile up to the big elephant is Mupo. The soil is Mupo, the rock is Mupo, because it's not made by human. And all is created by the Mupo spirit. We are here conceived because of Mupo spirit. And 9 months we stay in because of mupo. And we get out of our mother's pregnancy, mupo. We are walking in this hall. It's mupo driving us. We can't touch mupo. Mupo is spirit, is the creation. I am getting deeper to want to understand the difference between mupo and God. Mupo is what make nature is inside mupo. Environment is inside mupo. When your eyes able to see, it's a mupo making the eyes. And if we do not go back and understand the mupo, it will be difficult to protect nature. It will be difficult to understand the climate. Mupo is beyond what we can explain. Next slide. We are talking about the food. Economy, business, or whatever we want to call, taking the food. Today, food is about business. We were eating there. Everything which we were having is in the plate. Money came first for us to get that plate. And this is what is killing the mupo spirit interfering. Food today is not mupo food because it's pesticide food. It's chemical fertilizer food for human being to eat. But we don't care about the soil, which is mupo, when we put those pesticides. But if we look at this food from the system of mupo, we see that food is not only the food. There is system of food before we put it in the shelf and sell it. Food carries the sacredness because of mupo. I will use the example of us, the Bavenda, and it's not Bavenda only, all over. Food is spirituality. This is food. This is grains which make food. But for us, we respect, it's not only to make the gruel and eat. Food is for the ancestors. We were doing that. Food is for the elders. Elders carried what I'm saying I learned from the elders. Food is for the parents. Because the parents has to follow what elders talk about the food. Food is for the youth. What are the youth eating today? Food is the children, for the children. When we grow up, we were singing. When we do this, we have songs. When we plant, when we stamp, when we make powder, we have the songs. And the children sing these songs. Food is for the babies. Food is for those not yet born. In closing, if we don't look at food from the unseen ecosystem and unseen mupo understanding, we will always package food. That's why today South Africa is saying game economy. Butchering animals to make them in the shelf that people should go and buy meat of what? Innocent animal. In closure, is our time and mupo shake us and gather us here. And in every way, next month we're going to this COP. It's not a game, it's not for shelving in the book or shelving in the library. It's a reality for those not yet born. Food is about that cycle, and when we find mupo.
Thank you very much, Makadzi. Now, from the roots of community and tradition, we now move to the boardroom, where the conversation around business and nature is gaining new depth and responsibility. Our next speaker, Africa, is the co-founder of the Row Group, organizer of this conference. She's a sustainability strategist and business leader working on many initiatives to transform corporate mindsets. And she is also on the board of Bergplas Foundation. So she's going to explore the conversational relationship between business and nature and how companies can evolve from minimizing harm to actively restoring ecosystems. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. When I was asked to do a workshop later on today on business and nature, I thought, okay, how am I going to do that? And discussing that in the break now with Alastair, he said, that's tricky, business and nature. So I asked, why? Well, businesses, with all the money, they're destroying nature all over the place. Yeah, that's true. So this weekend on Bergplaats, I thought, let's start with asking nature, what is business for nature? Well, I was only there 2 days, but I did not get any answer. So perhaps for nature, business is non-existing. Well, in our world, it's existing. So I've been working with my colleagues here already for years on sustainability and corporations and business. And indeed, nature is quite a sort of blind spot for business. But I think I see 3 cracks in the window. From an economic perspective, regulatory perspective, and more an intrinsic motivation perspective. Let's start with the first one. Are you aware that 50% of our global GDP depends on nature? Especially the sectors, of course, food and agriculture, that goes without saying, but also construction. And our 6 industry sectors, for those, 50% of their value in the supply chain depends on nature. So when business is becoming aware of that, at least they acknowledge nature. Secondly, regulatory. There has been so much regulations worldwide, not only, I'm from Europe, from Netherlands, not only there, but worldwide, on sustainability in general. A lot was on transparency of reporting, but also on, for example, deforestation regulation, biodiversity. I'm looking at Esther, she's doing a workshop every month. Every month there's new regulation related to sustainability. First, I was quite skeptical. I thought people should work on sustainability and nature because they believe in it. But now I've changed my mind. It really works. Yeah? It works like, okay, we have to do that because it's a law, it's compliance, we sign for it. And if we are not transparent or not fair, we could even go to jail. That works very well, threatening with that. But what you see then, with business people, first it's for compliance, but when they get their head around, then also they have discussions at home, they often also have children, and they become more interested in sustainability in general and nature more specific. But for me, the third crack in the window is the most important and will be, I think, the lasting one. I've been a few times on trail with Ian, who spoke this morning. And we always took business women. We had women groups or sometimes mixed groups into in nature. In general, individuals joined for a personal purpose, request, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Is this a life I want to live? And that was what I noticed, the reason to join such a trail. But in almost all cases, after half year or after a year, they thought, okay, but I can't be a nature-related part of total person in my free life, and in my business life act differently. So I see there's some intrinsic motivation coming up to do the same in the business. That's not easy. But there I see nature is coming up as the new element. We were hosting, I think I was asked to speak at a webinar 2 months ago on biodiversity for boards. We expect 15 individuals, 150 showed up. So for me that shows there are a lot of individuals who really feel something's going wrong, but they don't know yet how to apply that in their business. There are some really front runners on business and nature from a company perspective. A phone, yeah, a manufactured phone, knows for sure that when they're not able to act within the planetary boundaries and have a positive effect on nature, they will not have a business future. How do you do that as a phone? We don't know yet. So they're really front runners, they're pioneering, and they have to find that out for business. How would that look like? A large flower grower and trader, flowers and nature and business. Also there, the board is convinced that they have to have, first they have to stop with having a negative impact on nature and everything which is related, and second, to organize a positive impact. Also here, no clue how to achieve it, but they've embarked on the journey. Will you find that on the websites? No. They're discussing it in a safe environment together, and we help them. And because it's so new, and once you mention it to the outside world, you know, I think half of the audience here will tell them you're wrong. Yeah? So they need a safe space to find out how can we have a positive effect on nature. And nature is often considered by business that equals biodiversity, not seeing that other dimensions of nature, such as water, climate change, soil use, are all different dimensions of nature. So that thinking still has to come together. But personally, and when I'm working with a company, my perhaps bold statement is, when you're not able to act within the planetary boundaries and have a positive effect on it, you better rethink your business, because you're not going to stay. So that's what my thoughts, and I'd like to explore it later in the workshop with some of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elfrika. So now we are going to have a Q&A again. So if you have any questions or something that was not clear and you are seeking clarity, this is your chance to ask our speakers here, and Makadzi also. Yeah, so who wants to start? No? Maybe you want to find out how to apply it in your company. Elfrika's here. Yeah?
So the question around, thank you, that safe space for companies to explore. From a biodiversity and a conservation point of view, we're in the same space. We're saying from a conservation and a biodiversity and a nature-friendly space, that community of practice is saying, how do we engage with government, with the commercial and businesses? So, I mean, what is it that we can do? How many safe spaces do we have to create, or how can we create this global movement that's not so, at such a high level, but actually bring it to almost a local level? And I think that's, I don't know if anybody can comment on that, but I think that is what I think needs to happen.
It's a question to me, eh? Yeah, I think that safe space is important, and also for the companies to have people outside their own, let's say, daily business to be there and think along. And I think that helps. And I feel I like to build bridges. There's quite often a tendency between business and other parties. So, and the other thing is, it's if we talk about nature, not if we talk about carbon dioxide. Everybody's working on that. But if we talk about nature, often there are only individuals within a company. And in one of the education programs we do, the participants are interviewing a person from business with the question, what is your personal relation to nature? Through interviews. And then the next question is, and how does that translate in actions? And that's really quite young if we discuss it with respect to nature, that thinking. But please reach out to individuals. That will help in business.
Thank you very much. We have another question at the back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a question for Ulrika and Saskia. I'm wondering, you talk, Ulrika, about doing business in alignment with the earth, with nature. And my question is, how do you get there? And do you see a space for, and maybe that's already something that's happening, for collaborations with people like Saskia in communicating with the land that you're affecting with your business to know what direction to take?
Thank you for the question. I invite a different worldview. So the first thing I would want to say is that an organization is not just an organization. It's an ecosystem that in the same way has we as ecosystems and landscapes, like large landscapes have ecosystems, there are more than human unseen elements there. Whether we call them elementals, nature spirits, ancestors, an organization will have a spirit as well. And it can also have guardians of that. So when we expand our worldview to include these unseen elements of the ecosystem, they're the ones with the power, and we can leverage and lend our free will to them. They will lend us their power. So it's a bit like communicating with them is making sure that we're not doing it alone. We're not just pushing with our agency, our human agency, to try and get things working. It ends up being something that we do as a team with the more than human. And I've seen that with my work, for example. So I will leave it to the spirit of eco-fluency to navigate which clients to get, how much to charge, when my calendar gets full and when it needs to have a break because I need the break. So I'm letting nature help to co-create how eco-fluency grows and is managed so that it's not just me and my agenda being pushed. And in that way, I would say that this is how we co-create the future, even on an organizational level, with the rest of nature.
Thank you. I strongly believe in that for the organization I work in as well. It's not necessarily the thought of mind of some corporate clients. But when the individuals, the powerful individuals of those corporates, when they go in nature, something happens. And they can't, that's what I see, continue as they were also in their business. But then it starts with the individual rather than the organization. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, can I just add that that is where what Nature Connect believes in as a experiential learning, immersive, usually camp was what we've had for the last 20 odd years, where you take kids out of the urban concrete jungle and expose people to get like that spirit of the wild experience, which speaks to us at that spiritual realm, such that it's inculcated from the start, and those kids can then grow and take their connection to nature wherever they go in society. That's the dream. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers. Anyone else? One last question. Going once, going twice? No? Okay. All right, so as we close off this plenary session, I would like us to think about how we in this room and in our own work, in our organizations, shift from taking from nature and working together with her. Up next, we are going to our breakout sessions again, and we are going to explore these connections. We are going to dive deeper. But before that, we are going to have a little tea break. So you pass by the tea station, then you go to your session. Those are the venues there, upstairs once again. So you see which session you registered for, grab your tea, and then go up. And you will hear the gong again.